Yana, come and record the Drift ad.
Today's episode is brought to you by Drift Outfitters in downtown Toronto, Ontario. Drift Outfitters is your source for all things fly fishing. From waders and boots to thread and feathers, Drift has it all. Check in on their website for their latest updates and policies regarding shopping during the pandemic. Curbside pickup for your online and phone orders is a great way to get the gear you need. And they're shipping for free across Canada on orders over $100. Visit driftoutfitters.com to learn more.
Hello and welcome to another episode of SoFly. It is mid-November and we are recording another COVID quarantine episode all apart. My name is Mitch and we've got Aldo.
Hey, everybody.
And we've got Yilma.
Hello, everyone.
We've got a very special guest on the show today. We're super excited to have Monty Burke on the show. Monty Burke is the author of the New York Times bestseller Saban, The Making of a Coach, a biography of Alabama head coach Nick Saban. He's also the author of Fourth and Goal, One Man's Quest to Recapture His Dream, which won an Axiom Award for biography, and Sow Belly, The Obsessive Quest for the World Record Largemouth Bass, which was named one of the best books of the year by Sports Illustrated and Amazon, and was chosen for Barnes & Noble's Discover a Great New Writers program. It's also the next book on my list of books to read before the end of the year because I freaking love largemouth bass. After a 14-year stint as a reporter, staff writer, and editor at Forbes, Monty is now a contributing editor at the magazine. He's also a contributing editor at Garden and Gun and The Drake. He graduated from Middlebury College with a BA in religion. He grew up in New Hampshire, Vermont, North Carolina, and Alabama, and now he lives in Brooklyn with his wife and his daughters. And he's the author behind the book we'll be discussing today, Lords of the Fly, Madness, Obsession, and the Hunt for the World Record Tarpon. If you haven't read the book, I highly recommend you check it out. It's a very entertaining read and an in-depth, interesting look into this really insane world that is tarpon fly fishing, and specifically the stories behind some of the best anglers ever in their pursuit to catch these monsters in Florida. The book's full of incredible stories involving anglers I've followed along with for years, including Lefty Kreh, Flip Pallot, Billy Pate, just to name a few. We're super excited to be chatting with Monty today. Monty, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. Whereabouts you calling in from today?
We're back in Brooklyn.
Right on.
We left for a little while during the heat of the spring pandemic. I went to Vermont, but I've been back here for a couple months now.
Right on. How's the fishing over there?
I don't know about Toronto, but New York is actually one of the most underrated fisheries, I think, in the United States. It's unbelievable. And it took me a little while to figure it out, but the salt scene here is just so cool. It's like an 8-month season. It's stripers in the spring. You have stripers on the flats in the summer. And then you have bonito and false albacore come through in the fall, and then stripers again and bluefish, during the whole period. It's actually really, really good. It's one of the things that keeps me here, actually, is how good the fishing is.
Yeah, I've heard about the stripers, but that's pretty much all I've heard about.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
I was going to do a little reference from, what's the bonito?
Oh, yeah, from Little Step Brothers, actually.
Step Brothers.
Classic. I love it.
Yeah,
Aldo, yeah, please.
Oh, I was saying, that's a really interesting point. We have steelhead running through downtown here, or Great Lake steelhead running through downtown, so It's like, that's pretty cool. It's like, you can go to the middle of nowhere and catch fish, but there's something to be said about living in a town of, well, for us, 3 million, and what's New York's population, 25 million or something like that? I don't know.
Eight on a good day, probably 15. It's always been fascinating to me I like to fish in Jamaica Bay, kind of where JFK Airport is, and other parts of Jamaica Bay, and to be like casting for a bunch of stripers who were devouring menhaden and birds coming down, and after you cast and maybe you release your fish, you look up and there's Coney Island right there, and it's all
that's cool.
It's like the weirdest thing in the world, but I love it.
That is
I love
weird.
that.
I love that too. Okay, well, why don't we get started with just like talking a little bit about the basics of who you are as an angler and a writer. How did you get into fly fishing? Like, how did all that began for you?
So my grandfather was a big fly fisherman. He actually went to Iceland back in the day, and he had like Orvis bamboo rods. And we moved to North Carolina when I was young, and I had a little bass pond in the back. And my brother and I would go back there with like big hairy poppers and probably like a foot of leader. And use those bamboo rods and just plunk them down, and especially during the spring, during the spawn, they would just jump all over it. And it just I did a little spin fishing before that, but something about the fly rod just got me big time. And kind of wherever I've lived all over the place, but I lived in the Keys for a little while, lived in Washington D.C. I always just got really into whatever sort of was the local scene. In D.C. I got so into fishing the Latort Spring Run, which is this really cool little creek in Pennsylvania. Lived out west for a little while, fished Sun Valley, fished Silver Creek and Big Wood, and I just have loved it ever since that first cast. I think I was 9 or 10 years old. Just really loved it.
Engulfed you. Has fly fishing been the deciding factor on where you lived throughout your life? It sounds like it kind of has.
It was until I moved to New York. I took a job here. I wanted to be a writer, so I took a job here at Sports Afield magazine, which at that time was a hunting and fishing magazine. Now it's a big game hunting magazine, but it was based in New York, so I had to move to New York. And I was really bummed when I moved here. I was like, oh man, like I am totally screwed. I'm not going to have any fishing. I discovered the Catskills, but it took me a little while to figure out. And I never forget, I got a phone call from this guide in Staten Island named Captain Frank Crescitelli. Yeah. And he called me Manty. He said, Manty, gotta come out and check this out. So he took me out actually, into the harbor here. I think it was like the spring. Yeah, it was like May or something like that. And it was just, it just blew my mind. It blew my mind. Yeah. All these stripers. And then, I got really into it. And yeah, so fly fishing, I'll put it this way. I would move if there wasn't fly fishing, but I've been lucky to find it in places.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. Cause you got started, like you say, your first experiences were warm water fish, right? Like, and that's so fun, right? Like just any fish is fun on a fly rod.
Totally.
What do you think it was about fly fishing that had you hooked? Like, what was it that, that just stuck with you?
A lot of it has to do with family. Like it was a cool way of connecting with my grandfather. My father fly fished for a little bit too. And my uncle fly fishes still. So it was like, I don't know, it was cool to be kind of in that club. You kind of felt like you were in the club. I always have loved, as I've gotten older in particular, I've loved the difficulty of it. Tom McGuane, the great writer, has a great quote talking about why we fly fish and why we make it more difficult. And he kind of likens it to the net in tennis. It's kind of what makes it the game. It's what makes it kind of competitive. And I just love, everything about it. There's something about, in the spring, I think about going to the Catskills, and I always like when I rig up my rod, for the first time, it's been a long winter, you rig it up and you got to put the line through and tie the fly on, and it leans against the car. And it's just like that potential energy that's stored within that rod is just always just gotten me, man. It's always gotten me. I really love, I've started spay casting lately. I've just adore everything about it.
Yeah. Oh, you just started spay casting, right on.
So did I.
Started like 3 years ago. Actually, I fish in Canada. I didn't go this year, but I've got a cabin on the Marguerite in Nova Scotia.
Oh,
that's amazing.
Nice.
Right on. That's wicked. Yeah, that's a nice place to be spay fishing.
my favorite place in the whole world. Actually, just random. We got the cabin right on the same pool where I caught my first Atlantic salmon 25 years ago. Just randomly happened to be that way, but it's really literally one of the coolest places in the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I love that explanation of why the potential energy. When you see that rod leaning against the car, it's a great way of thinking about fishing. But writing, how did you get into, like, do you remember your foray into fly fishing writing?
I always kind of wanted, so my uncle's a writer, and I always loved writing, and I loved, reading in particular, but then I sort of wanted to express myself in the same way. And, went to college, I studied religion. Out of college, I got a real job and actually applied to business school. And at the same time was fishing the Latort Spring Creek and just really loving it. And I met one of these old fellows up there, this guy named Ed Shank, who was one of the last of the old guard. He just died 2 years ago at the age of like 99 or something like that. And I met him and I was like, man, I'd love to do a story on that dude, having never done a story before. Went up there. My girlfriend, who's now my wife, actually came up, took the pictures, did a whole story without any magazine buying it or anything like that. He had just doing it kind of on spec. And I applied to business school, and this is a true story. Within the same week, I got into business school, and I'd sent this story off to a couple of magazines. And the same week I got into business school, I got a letter back from Sporting Classics magazine, and the editor's named Chuck Wexler. I still have the letter in my drawer up here. And he was like, I like your story a lot. It was like a 3,000 word tome. Like I really put it all in there. He said, I love your story. We'll buy it for $200. And I was like, made probably the worst financial decision of my life. But I was fuck business school.
Yeah.
I want to be a writer.
Yeah.
But you know what they always say about writing and about podcasting and anything you do, like you should write about what you know. You know, and like I don't profess to be Andy Mill or the world's greatest angler, but I know it because I love it so much. And so it actually it's a natural thing to want to write about sort of the thoughts that go through your head, the emotions you experience, the beautiful places that it takes place. I mean, you know, it's just, it just kind of a natural thing. Now I do a lot of non-fishing writing too, which is really good. I've never really wanted to just write about fishing because then I kind of it gets a little too much. You start to drive yourself crazy and start to use
totally
anecdotes, stories that you've already used somewhere else, you know, so, but you know, it is just something I love writing, and I like to take it seriously. And again, going back to McGuane, I've always loved the fact that, you know, McGuane is a really accomplished novelist, but he's always, you know, treated his fishing pieces as seriously as he treated his novels. And I just really love that. And when you get a fishing piece that rises up to that level, it's just something spectacular about that. Something that's sublime.
Well, and he's respected for that too. Like people take his fishing writing seriously. Like they treat it as seriously as the other stuff, which is really cool to see, you know, because fly fishing is relatively, you know, niche. It's getting more popular, but it's cool that a mainstream person like that writes about it in that way, you know? Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's, I mean, yeah, like I totally know what you mean. Like, especially when it comes to, like you said, podcasting, when you get to do this sort of thing, it also takes you to places that are exceptional, and you have an excuse to fish with guys like Evans and like meet those guys and actually like go out on the water with them. How did you get into this whole Florida tarpon thing? How did you meet these guys? How did this whole thing begin?
So I think it actually began with a magazine assignment. Garden Gun magazine, which is a Southern American magazine, asked me to write a story on this guy named Steve Huff, who is, they actually put the title on there. They said the greatest guide ever or something like that. I forgot the title, but it was, but it was totally true. Like he is literally thought of as probably the best shallow water, saltwater fishing guide ever. More world records, you know, in permit and tarpon, bonefish, and you know, just an all-around great guy. And what's cool about him is he's 70 something now, and he's still the best. You know, he's like, it's like DiMaggio kept playing baseball somehow, and like, you know, So I did a story on Steve, and then, you know, we got along pretty well. Steve has a static list of 12 people he fishes every year. One of those guys dropped out, and I had the audacity to call him up and say, "Hey, I heard so-and-so dropped out. Do you think I can come down?" He's like, "Sure." And so this was like 11 years ago. So ever since then, we fished every year. And so, you know, we spent a lot of time in the boat together. I stay at his house, so we have dinner with he and his wife, and he would talk a lot about, you know, about this place, Homosassa. And I just, you know, the name alone to me was like really poetic and enchanting. You know, it's like Homosassa. And I had an inkling of something had gone on big there, you know, back in the late 70s, but I wasn't exactly sure. But he told me more and more about it. He told me about Tom Evans. He told me about Stu Apt and Ted Williams and Billy Pate, all these, you know, Chico and Flip and all these guys who were there at this time chasing the world record tarpon. He, of course, Steve was there as well. And then, so, you know, that kind of planted the seed somewhere way back in my head. And then, a couple years after that, same magazine sent me down to do a story on Andy Mill, who of course is the former U.S. ski team member, was married to Chris Everett, became probably the greatest tournament tarpon angler of all time, an all-around great guy. And so I spent a couple days with him, and we got along pretty well. And he said, you know, there's a story you need to tell. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. There's a story you need to tell. So he kept bugging me about it. And I think it was about 2 years ago, he called me up. It's like, no, you have to tell this story now. These guys are all dying. You have to tell the story. And I called, it was the story about Homosassa and about this period, this magical period in the late 70s, early 80s, when, you know, you could argue that the world's greatest anglers, along with the world's greatest guides, fly anglers, I should say, were all in the same place at the same time, chasing the same thing. And that for about a 5-year period. And so it was like this sort of apex moment in fly fishing. So that alone was very intriguing to me. I, of course, I just come off doing the Nick Saban book, and I went to my agent and my publishers, and they were like, fishing book, dude? Are you serious? Like, there's not like another coach out there you want to write about? market for football coaches is a little bit bigger than it is for for fly fishing. But I went. Andy gave me Tom Evans' phone number, and I called him up, and he's in Vermont, not too far away from where I am. So I drove up to see him and sat with him for a whole day and just listened to these stories. And I said, "Shit, man, I got to do this story." I mean, it wasn't just the Homosassa part. Like it was like what led up to that apex moment, and then what's kind of come out of that apex moment, or what has come subsequently out of that apex moment. And so, it's just like a story that I really actually felt like I had to tell it. And it was a joy. Mm-hmm. The reporting, as you might imagine, was really fun. I mean, I had to spend, you were saying earlier how podcasting gives you an excuse to go these places, but also all the people, it gave me the excuse to knock on Stu App's door in Alvarado and say, "Hey, can I sit down with you for 3 hours and interview?"
Yeah, exactly.
Same thing with Flip. I mean, I called up Flip. He said, "Sure, come up and talk to me." So I went to his house and he cooked a bison burger and we sat and chatted around the fire. I mean, this is like stuff like when I was 13, if you told me I was going to do all that stuff, I'd have been like, "God, dude."
I know, exactly. Yeah. It's like the coolest thing ever, man. Like sitting around eating bison burgers with Flip Pallot. Like, come on.
Talking fly fishing legends.
Yeah, it's great. I was going to ask, that was my next question, like what an undertaking in terms of research. And because this book's just crammed with stories after stories. How did you approach, the actual research part? Was it literally that, just sitting down with these guys for hours and writing stuff down?
Yeah, I mean, so I didn't, in the beginning, I didn't realize, I should have realized it, but I didn't realize how connected the whole damn thing was, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can actually start with the first trout caught by the Macedonians, and you can kind of trace this whole thing, but particularly with saltwater and the flats, you can start with Bill Smith intentionally catching a bonefish on a flat in the Keys. And, that line, that thread goes all the way now to the present day. And it's sort of, Homosassa is kind of like, again, like one of the apex moments, if not the apex moment in saltwater fly angling for sure. So I should have known that it was more connected, but it all kind of, when you do this, I intensely reported it for about a year, which entailed seeing as many people as I could face to face, which was great, traveling to see people. Some were done in phone calls, lots of reading. So, it's interesting because the reporting part of a book is a very extroverted thing, right? I mean, I'm there to smile and get information from you and get stories, maybe some stories you don't want to tell me, but maybe you will tell me if you have a beer, that kind of thing. And then of course, once the reporting's over, to me, the reporting's over when you start hearing the same stories over and over again. You're like, all right, I got it.
Right.
I got it. So somewhere,
That's a good way to put it.
I always liken it to like a puzzle. So like the reporting is going out and gathering all these pieces and throwing them into a box. Yeah. And you're not that organized about it because you're just trying to get as much information as possible. And then the writing is, somehow in your brain you've been maybe connecting things as you're putting them in the box, but the writing is like shaking up that thing and then throwing it, putting all the puzzles on the ground and then trying to figure out how they kind of piece together. And then unlike the reporting part, the writing part is like a totally introspective, like I love both of them. I think I like the writing part a little better, but like you sit for hours by yourself, you grow a big gnarly ass beard. Your kids are like, kids look at you like,
yeah.
Go to work. I am at work.
You haven't seen people like, I haven't seen you in months, man. And but like fly fishing, when you're writing and the story is kind of forming in your head, like it's as intense as any. It's such a cool thing because everything I read, I'd be like, "Ooh, that's interesting. That maybe relates to something that I'm, writing about." Or you watch a TV show and you're like, "That's an interesting little nugget that I can." And everything leads to this cool ass thing that you're doing, And it's such a great. I'm always so bummed when I'm done. It's like, I'm just bummed.
Yeah, I know.
It must leave a hole. My mother's a concert pianist, and she practices for months, does the show, and then is just left with this hole. Is it kind of the same thing? You just kind of.
Yeah, I mean, you just, to me, the high is actually the reporting and the writing, and then the apex moment of the whole deal is when you think you've got it done. When I've rewritten the damn thing 3 times, I've crossed all the T's. I still have a damn typo every once in a while, but and then you push send and you send it to the editor, because then there's this like little weird period where you don't know if they're going to like it. Like you like it, but no one else has seen it. You don't know if it's worth a shit. It could be terrible. You wouldn't even know.
Yeah.
And so that's always like, so that's a really fun moment. And then when the editor says they like it or whatever, that's a great moment too. And then it's weird. There's this weird lag time, like I'm done with the book. It's been copy edited, whatever. And then there's this, because of the printing schedule and getting it into bookstores, it's like months and months and months. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, my book's coming out in like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then that's a whole nother can of worms. It's really, so the Saban book was more national, like, it got like national attention. I went on ESPN 5 or 6 times. Like it was a big kind of national deal.
Sweet.
This has been this wonderful, personal thing. Like I can't tell you how many people have written me emails or sent me DMs or whatever just to say that they read it, and it's like it's so every one of those things is like
gratifying.
It's like air, it's oxygen. It kind of keeps you going. It's such a cool, wonderful, gratifying thing. But
yeah, absolutely. How long did the writing process take for this one?
It took about probably, let's see, 8 to 9 months, I would say. I always like to give myself more than 6 months, if I can. Sometimes you just can't. You got other stuff to do. But I think I got a full 8 or 9 months out of this one. So that was just great. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, geez, like everybody read it, because you'll see it's just like compiling something like this and stringing it together, to your point, is a feat. I was like really amazed how many stories you actually got in this book. What was the reception like from some of the guys in the book? Like what did Pallot say when he read it?
It's funny you asked about him first. So what, there's a decision you make as a writer to be, am I going to be like, tell the objective truth, or am I going to like be careful and like, a lot of fly fishing writing fails, I think, because they deify people and they don't tell the whole truth. So I just decided, fuck it. I'm just going to tell.
I love that.
I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to tell like the stories that I got. I'm going to tell the truth. I ran all those things by these guys too. So Flip's an interesting character because, he is, in every other thing you read about Flip, he's the greatest fly fisherman in the world, which he probably was. He's 90 now. He probably not anymore, but he was definitely during the time. Not a lot of people talk about kind of what a braggart he was and what a hard ass he was as a guide on his clients and stuff like that. So I got a lot of those stories, and I was like, I'm not going to shy away from that, but to me that makes him more interesting. So like he's the Muhammad Ali of fly fishing, right? He talks a ton of shit, but he backs it all up because he's just. Sandy Moret used to tell me, Sandy Moret said something like he's never shy about a story about himself. But then in the next breath, Sandy said, people used to go to the dock to watch this guy launch his boat. Like he was that. People just wanted to be around. They wanted to be around.
Yeah.
Wow. So Stu was interested. So Stu sent me an email and he said, I appreciate, because I'd run this stuff by him before. He's like, I appreciate, I appreciate what you did. He didn't sound like 100% pleased, but
yeah.
I mean, he used to have this. He took a little issue with the fact that I reported that he had this RV, and he had a picture of himself on the side, and it said a big picture of himself on the side, and it said "World's Greatest Fly Fishing."
That's awesome.
He used to park the RV, in front of his house in Key West, so everybody could see it, and then he would drive it every year across the country to Montana. And so, again, with Flip, sorry, I'm talking about Stu App.
Yeah, Stu.
I just threw that whole thing up. I said Flip Pallot, but we're talking about Stu App.
Yeah.
Stu said, well, why'd you put that in there? And I was like, well, A, it's interesting, and B, it's totally true.
Yeah.
We're the world's great. I'm sorry, you said Pallot, and I messed up. And
no, you talked about Pallot, and then you went into Stu, which is great because I want to know about Stu too.
All right. So yeah, and then other people like actually haven't heard. I talked to Flip the other day, but he said he loved it, and that's about all he said. He was pretty short. Evans, Tom Evans is the sort of main character. And he's not treated gently in some parts as well, and he's a pretty tough guy. He was like he was like, that's whatever that you report, it's all accurate
is what it is. Yeah,
that's the most I guess it's the most important thing, right?
Yeah. And to me this is that's we're all human, and I even admitted in the book that like I'm a fucking jackass too. Like we all, some of us, we're all we're all human. I mean, Billy Pate to me was a fascinating guy to look into because once again he's been like, if you look at the BTT, Bonefish Tarpon Trust, and the IGFA, like Billy Pate is this huge character and shit. He was great, but Billy Pate was a total womanizer. you know, a total womanizer and a crazy man about records to the point where he talks smack behind people's back and all sorts of stuff. So, you know, to me, it was more important to tell the real stories. I think that's more interesting. Tell them as objectively as I possibly can. That's what I did with the Nick Saban book as well. So, you know.
Hey,
100%.
You mentioned you lived in the Keys. Were you fishing in the Keys? At what point in your life were you?
I fished a little bit. So actually, it's a.
And did you get a wind of any of this while you were living there, or did this
really,
happen?
No. I mean, so I was only there for. I went right after college. I went and lived down there on a boat, actually, off of Christmas Tree Island, which is off of Key West, and quickly aborted a plan to sing in bars. I was in my band. It was two of the dudes with guitars and sang in our dogs, and we did it for like 3 months, and I think we might have made like $50.
Right on.
That's pretty good.
That's something.
This isn't really working, but it was super fun. I took a job while I was down there too, so I worked during the day. But you know, it was pretty quick, pretty obvious it wasn't going to work. So I didn't have any money then, so I didn't fish. We fished some of the beaches. You know, we drive to some of the bridges and try to fish some of the flats then. But that's a hell of a hard way to fish for. You know, you got to be there at the exact right tide. And, So we didn't do very well. But no, I had no inkling of any of this by that. I mean, I'd read about Homosassa. I'd read about, you know, all these guys were my heroes and stuff like that. But I didn't know his whole story.
I was fascinated by the Keys.
He hasn't stopped talking about it since he's.
I just go down. A friend of mine, his parents, like just bought a house in the Keys randomly, like a couple of years, like I want to say 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to make a yearly pilgrimage down there because he goes down there to visit his folks at Christmas, and then I go in January because his dad's a big angler, and my friend isn't. So he takes me on he's got a flats boat. So I don't know. I remember the first time going down there and just seeing all these places I'd always read about and just being like, oh man.
Yeah, it's cool. You go to Rabbit Key and you go to all these like different. I mean, it's just really it's one of the prettiest and coolest looking things that I've ever, you know.
Even Isla Morada is like going through there for the first time. I was like, whoa, you know, like, and seeing all these places, you know.
Yeah, you got to go when you go to Isla Morada next, go to the Lorelei at like 4:00 when all the guys are getting off the water and just sit and listen to these dudes, man. It's like, it's awesome. All these great guides.
That's awesome.
Big clients there, and they sit down in happy hours and a crazy time at the Lorelei.
Oh God.
Is it ever not happy hour in the Keys? I'm always like absolutely faded the entire time.
I know. Good question.
Is Key West like at all familiar to like what it was and how you wrote about it in the book? Like, does it have some of those same feelings of, you know?
It to me seems very touristy now. It's like, you know, Wall Street is the main street now, and it's all t-shirt shops and you know, shitty margarita bars. But you know, if you venture off a little bit, you can get that flavor, that kind of, you know, when Tom McGuane and Jim Harrison and all those guys, the artists were sort of there. Yeah, you can get a little bit of that flavor. But man, it's super commercialized now. Once they let those ships come in and dump off, you know, cruise ship passengers. Although I bet it's been great. There's been no cruise ships down there since March, so I bet it's been you know, maybe reverted back. Who knows?
Yeah, it's sad. You know, the way you write about it, it's like, God, it sounds so awesome. Like the way it was, like this paradise, you know, that just existed. It's like it'd be so cool to go back there, especially if you're an angler. You know, like, jeez. But no, I think going back to writing honestly about these people, I think 100% it makes the most sense to do that, because it would be a boring book if it's just like, and they all sound like angels and they're amazing, you know, anglers, blah, blah, blah. But you actually got to spend time fishing with some of these guys in the water. What was that like? How were they in reality when you actually fished?
I mean, to me, the most interesting one was probably fishing with was Tom Evans, who was 82. And he's an interesting character because he was to me the obvious character to make the thread in the book, because he was there during the heyday in the late 70s. He's now 82. He still goes every year and pursues the world record. And he is now like, you know, he's an ex-football player, so he was a big guy to begin with, but he's had all these botched back surgeries, and he's like 300 pounds and, you know, he really literally can't stand up for more than a minute or so. So watching him was fascinating because, you know, he would, his guide had rigged up this little cage at the front on the casting bow, the bow of the boat. And he had a rope attached to it, and he had a big lawn chair, and Tom would sit in the lawn chair, and then when he would see tarpon, he would pull himself up real slowly and get up in that cage. And, you know, I was like, dude, how the fuck this guy even cast? And then all of a sudden when we saw the tarpon, it was like, you know, beautiful haul, and boom, fly right in front of the fish, perfect strip. Like it was like that.
Man.
So that was super, super cool. Fishing with Huff is fishing with Huff is like, just like one of the greatest experiences in the world, not only for his angling ability and his guiding ability, but just for, he's just a really good dude.
Mm.
I didn't really, who else did I fish with? I mean, there were, Andy Mill is still one of the greatest and, prettiest anglers I've ever seen. I mean, the time I fished with him, we had like 25 mile-an-hour winds coming right at us. And the string came by and he just like kind of leaned down and did this side cast, one haul, and then a double haul going forward. And boom, that thing landed perfectly, like on like 6-pound test, right in front of that tarpon's, whatever, a foot in front of the tarpon's nose. It was just beautiful to watch. Jeez. So it was cool to, some of these guys I didn't fish with Flip. I didn't fish with Stu, obviously. I didn't fish with Chico, but just hanging out with them was just freaking cool.
Oh yeah, I bet. I mean, it's like serious passion. Like Evans. The fact that he's still going and fishing and for tarpon that aren't an easy fish to fish for when you're in good health. Like it's crazy.
And especially he's now trying to break the 8-pound record, which takes like such. It's a young man's finesse in order to do that shit.
Yeah.
I mean, and yet he pops off a lot of them, but he's landed a bunch. So it's pretty fascinating.
It's wild, man. Can you explain a little bit about the I guess the record thing, how the tippet structure works to the fish and how that whole world kind of works?
Yeah, it's that was an interesting thing to look when I first got all that information. Said, how the hell am I going to write about this in an interesting way? Because if you're not really, really into it, like it's something else. But so the basic, tarpon leader itself is this beautiful piece of art. You got the butt section, and then you've got, an Albright knot, and then you've got this beautiful Bimini twist, and then you've got the tippet class, and then you've got the butt or the bite tippet. Yeah. So it's like this, I've tied one in my life. It took me about an hour to do it, and it was terrible. But they're just, I had to have an illustration of one in the book because they're just so cool too. Yeah. So the tip that, when it comes to fly fishing, there are line class records, and 20 pound is the heaviest that can qualify for a fly fishing record, and that's the tippet. That's the tippet breaking strength. Mm-hmm. Traditionally, it started off back in the Keys. Everyone fished 12 pound. They fished 12 pound for everything. They fished 12 pound for bonefish, and they fished 12 pound for tarpon. Very hard to land a tarpon on 12 pound tippet if you don't have a bite tippet. That was innovated by a guy named J.L. Cuddy way back in the day. He kind of decided that if you tie a little bite tippet to the tippet and then tie your fly to that bite tippet, then you can wrestle in a big tarpon. Mm-hmm. And so, there's all this, a lot of people think that 20 pound Billy Pate was a big proponent of 20 pound tippet. And, a lot of people thought that was a terrible idea, but he got it through the IGFA. Yeah. I would say the real traditionalist fished with either 12 or 16. Right. I like to fish with 16 because then it gives you can screw up a little bit more than you can on 12, mm-hmm. but it's also not too big that like if a big bull shark starts chasing your tarpon that you can pop it off real quick. I don't know. It seems more sporting. I mean, some people fish with straight lines of 30 pound test, which obviously you can't catch a record with that. It's not IGFA legal or whatever, but to each his own, but I'm not as hardcore as some of the hardcores in there that think that every time you go out, your tarpon rig should be completely IGFA legal. Yeah. But I do prefer, if I can, to fish with 16 pound. And of course, I have Steve Huff tie it for me. I can't tie the damn thing. So.
Yeah. Although when we were down in Tobago, what did we fish with for the tarpon?
We had 16 pound.
16, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 16 pound for the same reason that. Well, first of all, I wanted to make sure you landed your first tarpon ever, which happened.
It happened.
Nice.
Yeah.
But I think we used a Huffnagel for the legal.
That's a often used knot for that.
Yeah.
Yep. But Yuma,
how big was that tarpon that you got?
It wasn't too big. It was like when I caught the muskie, and it's like, oh, it's a 30-inch muskie. It's like, oh, okay. But at least I caught a muskie. It's like the same thing with the tarpon. It's not but it was
still cool.
It was decent enough to put on the photo on our.
Probably like an 8 pound, 8 pounds. There's a lagoon. So Yilma's from Trinidad and Tobago. We went down to as a little exploratory mission because, Yilma returned to Tobago as he often does for holidays, Christmas, and started looking at the ocean through the eyes of a fly angler. I was like, wait a minute, these are
totally different.
These are flats. Turns out there's permit, lots of permit.
Really?
Lots of permit.
Shit.
Bones and tarp, and there's a one lagoon where a baby tarpon hold. Anyway, so this year before, like honestly, as COVID was happening, like the plane was outrunning the virus on their way back, basically. We'd gone down there in March, and
Awesome.
It might be like the new.
Awesome.
It might be the new Homosassa of like permit. From what you guys were telling me.
Yeah, it could be. It could be definitely. We saw.
Well, nobody fishes it, right?
Yeah.
We saw.
Until now.
Until now.
It's the bag now.
There's a crew of Germans and Swedes that just come down just for the permit, because like every time you go out, you'll see a couple, right? And especially the time we went, but our guide was saying August is prime time for all three.
Are they tailing permit, or are they swimming in schools? Tailing. Wow.
Yeah. We were seeing schools and tailing permit, which was pretty cool.
Well, let me just write that down.
The thing is, there aren't any flats boats, so it's almost like the world could descend on it. I don't know how you'd get out to the flats,
right?
But there is one lagoon that holds baby tarpon, and that's where we fish for the tarpon. And Yilma got his first tarpon, which is really cool.
Awesome.
Really cool. Yeah.
Which was really
your first tarpon though, Monty. Like, how long did it take you again to get that thing in? And I'm not saying that to be like, oh my god, look how long it took. It was a big fish.
It was a big fish. So I was with Steve. The time we did the article, actually, we didn't fish for tarpon. We fished for snook, and I was kind of more, being a reporter, I was taping them, and we're taking notes, all this sort of stuff. So that then the next time I went down with them, the first day we got out there, and in the Everglades, unlike the Keys, the tarpon you see, for the most part, at least the ones that Steve looked for, are laid up, which to me is the greatest way. I mean, so the Keys, the water is not quite as clear. In the Everglades, it's not quite as clear as the Keys. It's a little bit muddy, but if you really kind of strain your eyes, you can see all of a sudden this sort of silver bar.
That's so cool.
And there's little pinks. There's pink sometimes on the tail, and sometimes you can't tell which side is the tail, which side is the head. But anyway, so that morning, I mean. My God. I mean, I've been fly fishing since I was 8 years old. I'm surprised that Steve just didn't say, fuck it, we're going home, because you just came fast.
Yeah.
Like I think I blew 6 great. I mean, this is like, 40 feet, 50 feet cast. Like there's your fish. Right. Not that 30 feet even sometimes. And I was throwing it on their head. I was throwing it on their back. I was throwing it too far away so they couldn't see it. I just blew cast all day. And, I think finally, like after lunch, it was like this duo, and I finally put a good cast in there, and something kind of clicked. Those fish flushed anyway, but something kind of clicked, and then we were in a different cove, and this just giant fish just went up and got some air, and the bubbles came up, and I could see it just laying there, and without even Steve saying anything, it just like was reactionary, which is what I needed. I needed something like didn't know how to think anymore, just need to react. I threw it down there, one pull. Boom, like a pull that I will never forget in my life. And I just remember, going, oh, like that. And then the line was like a guitar string, like going across the stern, and Steve got under it, and a fish jumped, it jumped behind us. And I said, Steve, there's another tarpon jumping. He goes, no, that's your tarpon. I was like, what? It's like all the way behind us. So I fought the thing for 2 hours, and it's like, I mean, when you have a big tarpon, one thing that I think is really interesting about tarpon fishing, and what turns a lot of people off actually, is that you have to actually fight the thing. It's not like catching Atlantic salmon where it takes out line and then you reel a little bit, and it takes out line. You're kind of holding your rod. Like with the tarpon, you have to pull. You're pulling
your body weight,
pulling as hard as you can. And you're reeling, and then you're pulling. And with 16-pound test, you can pull pretty much as hard as you want. Without popping it. You can pop it if you point the rod right at it and bring it like that. But if you're using the rod. And so, I thought I was doing everything right. Steve was guiding me through it, and he was like, just take your time, be cool. And I see why a lot of people, I saw during that time why a lot of people just like to jump a tarpon. Like they jump it once and then they intentionally break it off just because it's a real, unless you're good at it, it's a pain in the ass. So 2 hours later, this thing had dragged all over the place. And this is literally 2 hours of me pulling as hard as I can.
Yeah.
My knees are, I've been leaning against the casting platform. My knees are just like bleeding. I've sweated through everything, my shirt, my pants. I'm dehydrated.
It's like the old man in the sea.
Yeah, I feel like I'm gonna throw up. My arms, my hand, I can't. For like 5 minutes afterwards, I couldn't. My hand was in this kind of clutch claw. I couldn't get out. But we finally landed it, and remarkably, the damn thing, like literally, like the minute he took the fly out, it was like when it just shut off. We were like waving in the boat because it was 140 pounds, so it wasn't like a world record, but it was a big fish. And I'll never forget that my first instinct was like, oh, thank God that's over. And then literally the next thought in my head was like, God, I want to do that again right now. It was just amazing.
Total addiction.
And then Steve told me, he was very nice. He said, don't worry about it. Billy Pate once took 12 hours to get a tarpon.
Boom. There you go.
There you go.
12 hours though. Eh?
Oh my God. What the hell?
Of course, my first thought was like, man, it would suck to be Billy Pate's fishing partner when he hits it.
Totally. No, I mean 140-pound fish, and I mean I don't even know if I'd be able to fight that thing because it really is like wrestling with the fish.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And you do get so subsequently I've caught more, and I just now I'm a little bit more reckless. Like I'm gonna either get this thing in pretty fast,
right,
which is 30 to 40 minutes, or I'm gonna pop it off. And if I pop it off, I pop it off. Yeah. I'm not gonna do 2 hours again ever in my life.
Yeah. No, it's amazing.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. I mean, like to practice something like that and get good at it, like these, like Evans and stuff, who've been doing it for decades, almost exclusively. It's like, it's just so much. You just really do have to be that passionate, invested in it, because, like you say, it's physically quite tolling, and that's even if you catch one. Like finding the tarpon is hard.
Yeah, I mean, standing on the bow all day for whatever it is, 8-9 hours, and squinting into the sun. It's a real sport, which is what's cool about it. I think it's like it takes a little fortitude, mental and physical.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm actually scared. I will admit that I'm a little bit scared in the mornings. When Steve and I have breakfast before we go out, I'm a little bit like, do I have it in me to do this today? Am I up for this? Because it's a real mental battle.
Sounds like me and Tobago. I'm with you on that one. You're right. It is a mental, because you are looking a lot more than you're fishing. And you're fishing when you're looking, but you're just like, that's such a good way of putting it. I remember like having my coffee there, staring out the window, and Tobago being like, do I have 10 hours of staring at the surf in me right now?
God, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, the payoff is huge, right? And it is fun. Like, God, it's so much fun.
Well,
it's
like
so beautiful.
Anything else that gets that engrossing and you can forget everything else in your life and it just like kind of clears your mind. It's like, I mean, that's one of the great things about fly fishing too, is it doesn't mean a damn thing, but you can get so into it. I mean, you can, and it can just take you away from all, especially I feel like this year and, last 4 years, we've kind of needed to kind of, an escape, and it truly is an escape. And it's to me, the most mind-clearing thing in the world is to have a tarpon bite your fly. Just like you're not thinking about it. You're not thinking about your taxes. You're not thinking about the president. You're not thinking about anything.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit.
That moment. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. God, I gotta go fucking tarpon fishing. Oh my God.
Dude, you do, man. It's so much fun.
Can't even handle this. So, okay, one thing here. You talk about fame in the book and like fame amongst anglers, and obviously that's just, like kind of a thing with these guys, Pallot and all these people. I want to talk a little bit about Lefty. Have you ever met Lefty or fished with Lefty?
I have, actually. Excuse me. I, again, for the same magazine, I think it was after the Steve Huff story, they're like, hey, do you want to go do a story on Lefty? And I was like, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So I drove down. Lefty at the time he was 89 years old, 90 years old. I drove down to his little, cute little modest house in Maryland. And, he was like, well, first thing we got to do is we got to go take you out for a casting lesson. So he took me to this local pond. I later learned that he does this with every writer.
Okay, yeah.
I started to lead the story with like, I went to Lefty's house and I got a casting lesson, and I looked up some old stories, and I was like, I've been doing this for like 20 years with different writers, so I had to kind of have a different lead on it. But Lefty was such a cool dude. I mean, he just, he had a tennis ball on the top of his antenna so that he could find his car, in the parking lot.
Yeah.
He had a little handmade resting thing, so he put his arm down in his car. He had a paperback novel in his car that he would read in traffic. I mean, he was a really cool dude. And, I just, I can't cast as well. I tried, I got out there and I tried to do my double haul, and, I thought I was doing pretty good. And this 90-year-old dude who's like he's half my, 90 years old, looks like Yoda, just is like, sling, and the whole fly line goes off. It's like it's just insane. So, Lefty was just a treasure. I mean, but he was he was the Carnival Barker of the fishing world.
Right.
As Steve Huff always said, I knew better than to tell Lefty anything about where I fish, because he would tell everybody. In fact, that to me was a fascinating thing to find out. Was that Lefty was kind of the one who pulled the lid off of the Homosassa fishery, which to that point, before Lefty did that, was no one knew about it. There were 3 guys from the Mirror Lure company who fished it, and no one else really knew about this giant sort of subset of tarpon that came in every May to Homosassa Bay. Yeah, and one of the guys made the huge error of taking Lefty Kreh, who was at that point the writer at the St. Petersburg Times, and they said, "I'm going to take you and show you this place if you swear not to tell anybody." And Lefty said, "I won't tell anybody." Lefty goes out, catches an enormous tarpon, sees all these other enormous tarpon. A week later, the paper has a story about Lefty Kreh, about all the big tarpon in Homosassa.
Oh man!
God, and so it wasn't the internet age, so it didn't spread like wildfire. But that's definitely what got the word out. That's what started to kind of leak the word out to the hardcore guys.
Yeah. Okay. I was gonna ask that kind of. I was gonna say, was Lefty responsible for lifting the lid, or was it inevitable? But it sounds like Lefty was pretty responsible.
I think it was inevitable at some point.
Yeah.
I think Lefty's thing started. There's another guy named Norman Duncan who was part of that group of what they called the Four Musketeers, which was Chico, Fernandez, Flip Pallot, Norman Duncan, and a guy named John Emery, who were all these University of Miami students who sort of got geeky about fly fishing together at the same time and came up with all these cool innovations. But Norman also had been up there early. Somehow he'd stuck his way in there, and he started telling people about it as well. So, it was a combination of Norman talking about it and Lefty writing about it that got Steve Huff and Tom Evans up there. And then they both caught world record fish within a week of each other. And then boom, word was out, and the circus began.
Yeah.
Right. Where is Homosassa exactly?
It's on the Gulf Coast of Florida. It's about 70 miles north of Tampa.
Okay.
It is still a little, at least the town of Homosassa itself is relatively charming. It's got beautiful, oak trees and everything, and Spanish moss, and the surrounding area has become a shit show. It's just strip mall, and retirement communities and more golf courses than you can shake a stick at. But the little town itself is still pretty cute. But it was at that point when those guys got up there in 1976, 1977, it was tiny. It was a crabbing town. There was like nothing around. There was a 2-lane road that went into it. It was tiny. And no one knew anything. No one knew anything about it. It's pretty cool.
When you look at it on a map, Aldo, and you see the.
I'm looking at it right now, man.
If people listening at home, go Google Maps it, because when you look at the water, it's like, oh yeah, that looks like such good tarpon. All the little rivers and things like that. Like, I'm like, how can that? Obviously that's amazing.
And that flat there's a big flat they call the Oklahoma Flat. Is just literally one of the coolest. It's a little deeper than some of the Keys flats, not the ocean side, but some of the inside Keys flats. It's like 8 feet or whatever, but just blindingly white sand. You can see the tarpon coming from 200 yards away. I'm not kidding you. You look out and you like, those look like black tadpoles. What the hell are those things coming at you? And it's like, holy crap! Here they come.
That's so cool.
It is just that flat is so cool. So
man, I want to go fishing for tarpon.
Is it still it's still a place you can go fish for tarpon and it's still good, right? Like Evan still goes down there.
Yeah, it's not. So, after that great rush in the late 70s, early 80s, things started to really fall off in the late 80s, and then the 90s were just a disaster. I mean, so there were tens of thousands of tarpon that used to come there every May back in the 70s and early 80s. And then a combination of becoming too popular. I mean, Billy Pate brought in ABC, American Sportsman, to come do a television show. Then he shot a movie. Yeah. New York Times did a story on it. Sports Illustrated did a big story on it. So it just became this really popular place. And all of a sudden there were 100 boats there, which the place really should take about 10, 10 to 15.
Damn.
So that combination of that, and then a combination of the horrible freshwater problems that Florida has, all these developments, all those golf courses I just mentioned, take water. All of those senior citizen communities just started taking waters out of the aquifer. So you had those rivers you were talking about going in there had less fresh water, making its way into the bay, which doesn't seem that important to tarpon, but it is important because that attracted the crabs that attracted all these tarpon. So it's not a place, it's what, as I describe in the book, it's like now it's hermetically sealed off from the rest of the tarpon world. It's not a place for a beginner because it's expansive, and there's also these rock piles everywhere that people always run into. And also there's just not that many fish there. I mean, you can go to Key West on a good day and you can see literally hundreds of tarpon swim by. You might not catch any, but you'll see them. And that alone kind of makes a lot of people's day, right?
Yeah.
You can go to Homosassa and you can go there for 2 weeks and not see one fish.
Yeah.
Damn.
So, there's a couple days every May when it seems like it's back to normal. Like it seems like, there's hundreds of fish swim the flat and they're big and they're chunky and all this kind of stuff. But then it's just not that. In fact, this season, this 2020 season, which was great everywhere else for tarpon because of the lack of anglers, was horrific in Homosassa. I mean, the guys went there who caught one fish in 30 days. So it's a place I would go more for nostalgia's sake.
Yeah.
If you were going to try to catch your first tarpon, I would definitely not go to Homosassa. I'd go to the Everglades, or I'd go to the Panhandle, or I'd go to Keys. Probably the Panhandle, or Trinidad and Tobago.
Exactly, yeah. Or I was going to say this entire thing is just a front by you guys and Evans and all to stop people from going to Homosassa and bring it back. And it's actually on fire right now.
That's possible, but I looked at I went down there 3 seasons and. They're not that many fish. And I read Evans kept logs for 30 years and I read all of his logs, and it's just like it gets more dire and dire with every page you turn every year.
Right.
So,
Is that an area of focus for groups like Bonefish Tarpon Trust, or are they more Keys focused?
They're probably a little more Keys focused, although I think they in Patagonia are announcing an initiative this week, actually, or maybe next Monday, about getting the freshwater, demanding that Florida deal with their freshwater a little bit better. So they're starting to kind of, they deal with tarpon everywhere, so that's important to them. But that there's not enough focus, I don't think, by anglers really on what the hell's going on in Florida right now with the water, because it's not only the crabs, it's also juvenile habitat, because the freshwater comes in with the mangroves. I mean, the Everglades are dying of thirst at this point. I mean, it's kind of a possible big ecological disaster, which is going to affect our fishing, which is kind of in the making right now. But not to get too,
No, I think
dramatic.
I think it's good. I mean, I was gonna ask, are you hopeful about, people coming together to try to turn stuff around, specifically there? Like, do you see positive change?
Not really in Homosassa. I will never say never about anything, but it seems to me that Homosassa may stabilize at some point and be a little bit better than it is, but it'll never go back to what it was. I mean, just that water. It's not like they're going to be like, okay, golf courses, you can't water. And it's like so that aquifer is just in trouble now. But I am hopeful. I'm hopeful. I retain hope for the Everglades. I retain hope for the Keys. And, one thing, maybe a silver lining of 2020 is the number of new anglers that have been introduced to this sport. Maybe not quite as many saltwater anglers, a lot of trout, a lot of people getting into trout fishing, stuff like that, but they become, the sort of natural progression is to start with trout and then, maybe salmon and then maybe stripers and then maybe get, try the saltwater thing. So some of them will become saltwater anglers. And the more people involved, although it's annoying sometimes on the water, if there are a lot of new people around, stuff like that, Aldo Leopold supposedly once said that we protect what we love. And I think the more people that start to love this thing, the more kind of political might we have. And there is in the last gubernatorial election in Florida, the water folks. So the folks who are working on Everglades and working on, Florida's freshwater situation really, had some political might. And they actually, that election was, in the tens of thousands or something like that. And it's possible that they were the swing, that the water folks were the swing. The guy who was elected, who turned out to be, not that great, but at the time anyway, he wasn't taking any money from Big Sugar, which is one of the big water depleters down in Florida. So that was a big deal. So they kind of swung their might behind him, and they may have changed the gubernatorial election. I don't really know, but I think you have to, all fishermen are optimists, right?
Yep, that's true.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a good point.
You're only one cast away from greatness, as my friend Paul Brune always says. And
I love that quote. I love that.
There's a optimism, a natural optimism that fly fishermen have, and I think that translates into our resources. I mean, we're going to have to fight like hell, but they're worth fighting for. That's for sure.
For sure.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
That is what I was gonna ask. I was gonna kind of end this whole thing. Actually, you know what? Before we get there, because this is kind of all connected, but just quickly about catch and release, I want to talk a little bit about that, because tarpon catch and release obviously is, well, at least with the record guys, it's a whole other thing. But like catching a tarpon, can you catch a tarpon and be confident that the success of the release, like the fish is going to live? Like how shady a gray area is that?
I spent a little chapter on that because it's such an interesting question. So I'm a catch and release. I wouldn't kill it if I caught a 300-pound tarpon. I would not kill it for a record. I just wouldn't do. Even if I was an IGFA legal, I just wouldn't do it. I just don't believe. I don't know. I just don't want to kill a big animal like that. If I'm not going to eat it, especially if you're not going to eat the damn thing, right? If you're going to eat it, you might think of it differently. So I used to walk around like with my nose in the air, being like, "Man, I'm a catch and release angler. I'm better than anybody else," which is horseshit. It's still whether you catch it, whether you keep the fish or release it, it's still a blood sport. Yeah. As Steve Huff always says, whenever we catch a tarpon, he says, "You ruin that fish's day." So I think it's really important for catch and release anglers to think about that a little bit more. And it's a moral question that everybody has to kind of figure out on their own, I think. You don't think about it every time you go out, but every once in a while stop and think about what you're doing. So, in order to submit a record for tarpon, unfortunately, because they're so big, you have to kill it. And it's actually kind of a gruesome thing. It looks, they usually string a rope in it and put a scale on one side and then put it around a tree and then lift the tarpon up on a tree. So it has these sort of real unfortunate sort of lynching
kind of.
It's not cool. Yeah, it's not cool looking. Yeah. But the good news is that maybe one fish is killed for a record a year. I mean, there's just not many more. There's not many world record chasers, so people just don't kill them for that reason. Yeah. Now, catch and release, it kind of depends on where you are. I mean, the Boca Grande Pass, which is one of the great staging areas for tarpon, there are tens of thousands of tarpon in there. Yeah. The sharks know all about this now, and they will literally on some days kill 300 released tarpon, because when you release a tarpon, it just doesn't have the juice it had, when it was just swimming around. So
holy shit!
I think that's there are certain areas maybe that we should consider. I don't know, not fishing, or when there's sharks around, you call it off, you blow the horn, and you better get out of the damn water. But that's why I was saying earlier, I'm not afraid. If I'm over the 30-35 minute mark on a tarpon, I'm just going to start horsing the damn thing in, because it's just going to break off and it'll have a great chance of survival, I think. I think when you go over the 45 minute mark, that tarpon probably will live, but there's a better chance that a shark will get it, or that it will.
Well, so if you catch a tarpon and the thing is going to die, and this is going to sound like accusatory, but I'm in the exact same position because this happened to me a couple times, and it really bums me out. But how do you justify going back out after that fish died and you caught this tarpon for catch and release? It dies and you go, I'm going to hit the water again.
I hate killing fish. I really do. And but I killed killed an elk a couple years ago, and it was like one of the most moving experiences I've ever had. I ate, I gave 400 pounds of meat away, and I ate, I don't know how many pounds of damn thing. So, that's more
big elk.
That's awesome.
It's a big elk, yeah. So, so the way that I've justified my morality when it comes to fishing is that what we were talking about before a little bit, that without anglers and without the money that is raised through fishing licenses, but also the sort of political might that anglers have, and again getting back to the Aldo Leopold quote, we protect what we love, right? And so it seems like a conundrum to non-anglers, right? But I remember that I did a story for Forbes one time. There were these PETA protesters throwing rocks into a river where fly fishermen were trying to catch trout. And, I wrote a story like, without Trout Unlimited, without those trout anglers, there probably wouldn't be many trout in that pond. I know for a fact without the Atlantic Salmon Federation, there would not be the salmon in some rivers in Nova Scotia in particular. So, I justify it. And again, this can change as I get older. Who knows what's going to happen? But I justify it that, I give money to conservation. I care about conservation. I stay up on these issues that I protect what I love. And then without the BTT, which is all anglers, there would be no research on tarpon. There would be, the bonefish would be in more trouble than they are in the Keys. I mean, so that's how I justify it anyway. I'm not saying that's for everybody, but that's just personally how I've justified it.
Yeah, I love, and I ask because I love that in the book you touch on that and you talk about how it's up to every angler to think about it themselves. It's something I think about all the time, and when a fish does die, I'm like, why am I doing this? But I inevitably come back, I agree, I come back to, I care so much more about that fish than anybody I know, right. And it's like, it's just such a strange thing that we do, but I think it's important for us to think about, and I liked that you talked about that. So going back to where fly fishing's headed, and we were talking a little bit about, more anglers and stuff, and the internet's attracted all kinds of, anglers. Are you optimistic that the future of angling, and there's so many more people getting into the sport, are you optimistic that that is a good thing, and that, with crowding and places are, Lefty, so to speak, is giving away places, and Instagram is giving away places and all that kind of stuff. Are you optimistic that's a good thing? Do you think fly fishing's headed in a good direction?
I think in general, fly fishing is headed in a good direction because there's a younger generation that's really stepped up, and I do think that they're just naturally more conservation minded. I personally could do without the Instagram. I mean, I don't know how some of these folks, and again, this is just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
It's the second time we heard that.
Grip and grin. I mean, if you look at their Instagram pages, that's all it is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's if that floats their boat, good for them. That does not float my boat.
Yeah.
To me, fishing is way better captured in your mind, and I've always thought that writing and reading are the best ways to kind of get the actual feel for fishing. I mean, even a great fishing movie doesn't quite get you there, because it's such a sport of internal monologues and
absolutely,
it's a sport of the interior. It's a sport of the mind to me. So to me, writing, has always been the the best way, or reading has always been the kind of best way to get at it. So, but I am, I don't know. I mean, I'm, you got younger people, you've got people of color, you've got women. I mean, these are all really good things, right? They're not just good things; they're great things, and I think that will be good for, again, getting that kind of political might a little bit, that protecting what we love. Hopefully, that will be, a big. It will translate into some saving of these resources. If people give away my secret spot on the Marguerite through an Instagram post, I'm gonna be pretty pissed.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you kind of take the good with the bad. I mean, there's I fish with some younger anglers, 20-year-old anglers, and they're just like, they're Instagram fiends, man. And I'm always like, if I take them to a spot, I'm like, please don't. If you just blur the back, something like that, or just take the day off, post something else for,
Yeah.
But so I don't know. Are you guys optimistic about it? I mean,
I don't know. It's a good question. Like, I don't have an answer. I ask this question all the time. I'm like, I don't fucking know. I don't know. I think,
good you ask the question then.
Yeah, it's tricky because I think that you hit on some good points, that the internet and Instagram open up a lot of good things, but the giving away of fishing spots, it is. It is. I'll never understand, and it's less about the giving away of the spots. It's more about it's kind of more old internet forum stuff where it's like, oh, the fishing's really good on the river and the spot, and someone goes to the internet to tell everybody. And I don't understand why you'd want to do that. Like, why do you want to inform everybody about that? Like, what is that giving you? What do you get out of that? I
do think, with fly fishing too, there's this, you have to learn so much, right? In order to make it good, right? Not only about spots and stuff like that and casting, but tying knots and what kind of flies and stuff like that. So there's that, the people who will really get into it will have to still always take those steps. Instagram's not going to get you there.
That's exactly it. Like when, like I posted a picture of a fish I got the other day, and it's like, if you know where that is, you already know more about steelheading than I do. So you know what I mean? But, Lefty going to Homosassa writing an article about how amazing that place is, a little different, right? Yeah.
I'd like to say I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
I think here's the thing is, for me, it's like people are always going on about like spot blowing and in places, specifically in places that like with us, I don't know. We posted some things, let's put it this way. We posted some things and, some people were like, oh, I can't believe you blew up that spot. It's like, well, first of all, this spot is,
in Toronto.
It's publicly marked. And the point, and it's been, a secret, not a secret for so long and been misused for so long that for me, it's like, I don't care. I'll blow up a spot. It means more people, like you said, you protect what you enjoy. If somebody goes to those spots that, I'll just, like those spots on the Upper Credit River, it's a small, cold water stream. We don't have many cold water streams in Southern Ontario. And it's one of the last places that has wild brook trout and a naturalized population of wild browns. And it's like, this river needs friends and it needs stewards on it. So please come here. So I'm definitely one for keeping secrets. Definitely, especially when it comes to like our Temagami backcountry spots. But when it comes to spots that need help, I see it as a tool, as a positive tool. And like you said, I think most people, like growing up looking at my grandfather's pictures, his fishing pictures was he would take pictures of fish on a lawn with like 50, 60 photos of, it's like they took their picture at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's right.
Whereas like now people are taking pictures, and putting captions on it like, keep fish wet. So it's like, maybe, like you said, it's a different type of angler. I'm hopeful.
And how about you, Wilma?
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry, for me, my turn. Oh, I can tell who you're looking at for a second.
I can't either.
I'm also hopeful, but what I do like about, I guess, what is the discovery of these spots, and like you kind of touched on it, as a fly angler, you work your way toward. I mean, you tie flies because it's challenging. You fly fish because it's challenging, and you find the spots because it's challenging, and you work hard for these things. So I would hope that, speaking specifically for SoFly, that our fans are willing to work hard for those spots too, and just see us as more of an inspiration to go out there themselves and find it themselves. Right. Sort of my thing.
Have you guys ever had a secret spot found by someone else?
Yeah, I have. But it was a pretty easy to get to secret spot. So I was like, all right, but it did definitely, the fishing degraded.
I had a little on the Marguerite. There was a little pause lie, so it wasn't really a pool, but it was a spot where, if the salmon were moving, they always stopped, and if you put a fly over it, they always ate, always. And it was my spot for like 5 years. It was, and every time I go there, if those, I look at the rain. If the rain came in, like boom, I was there. Yeah. I went back. I think it was last summer. Last summer I went back and I hiked up there, and you got to go through some brush like that. And I get there, and there's 2 dudes sitting in my spot. And I was like, God. Oh my God, it's such a terrible. I just I walked away with my tail between my legs.
It's a gut punch.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that happened to us this year. I mean, when I first went steelheading was with Mitch, and his uncle told him to go to a certain spot. I'm not going to name it, of course. And we were the only ones there. It's myself and Gab, who was one of our SoFly guys. And Mitch had a couple, what do you call that?
A boil, yeah.
Yeah, a couple boils, but you had one on for a little bit too, and it was good. And then this year, it's everyone's there, and it's because somebody posted catching a steelhead at that exact spot, and it only took, less than 5 years for that to become
It's a thing.
something.
It's inevitable, right? Like it's so hard to fight that stuff. That's why I think that, I think the internet and things like that, there's a lot of good dialogue going on now. Things are going to change for the better. I think people have it in them, but it is not the inspiration, Yelma. That's a good way to put it. Just have fun fishing and talking about fishing. But
That being said, Yelma, sorry, Monty. That being said, that river's tributaries are healthier than ever now.
Yeah,
and
true.
it was because of the work that has been done on that river in the past 5 years
All the people that fish it.
by getting people on the river.
Yeah.
So it's like,
That's great.
Yeah.
So
it's like there's more people there, but there's also tens and thousands more fish.
Yeah.
So it's like,
It's a tricky one. It's a tricky one.
It's a tricky
Yeah.
one.
And there are probably always new spots. I mean,
Yeah.
it's good to have to look for a new spot every once in a while.
Totally.
Yes, totally.
It's part of the fun.
Absolutely.
Well, hell
100%. Okay. Mitchie's Fishies 5 time?
okay, thank God. I thought I had to do like a factor.
No,
fishing.
that's okay. Not today. Next time, maybe. Monty, every show we ask every guest at the end of the show, same 5 questions. And they're just more 5 questions, just kind of broader fly fishing questions. But we're going to ask you them right now. And the first one of the Mitchie's Fishies 5 is, what is your favorite fish and why?
That's like asking me which is my favorite of my 3 daughters.
Yeah.
Do you like music?
I'm gonna cheat and I'm gonna name 3. I love tarpon, Atlantic salmon, and brown trout.
Yeah, I mean, that covers the bases, I would say.
Yeah.
Those are
There you go.
fantastic fish. God, I got to catch it. I still have to catch an Atlantic salmon and a tarpon, but
I keep telling you, man.
I know, God.
He does.
You guys should come to Nova Scotia and do your show out of the cabin next year.
Oh, my.
Whoa!
That would be sick.
Come up in
Oh,
October.
really?
It's like the greatest collection of crazy fishing dudes.
Man, that would be
So
wild.
fun.
That would be
There
wild.
are plenty of people from Toronto, by the way, who make
yeah?
the drive.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Yeah, we got it. That'd be amazing. Yeah, 100%. Jeez. Nova Scotia.
I've only ever done Gaspé once, and I would love to do. Nova Scotia.
Marguerite's cheap too. It's public, so.
Oh, wow. Oh, my
Yeah.
God. Yeah,
See
we're
you
down
next
for
year.
that. Sign us up for that, 100%.
See you next year.
And it's in Canada, so we don't have to worry about borders or anything. That's great.
Right.
Okay, so number 2 is, if you could fish anywhere in the world right now, assuming it's the best time of year to go there, where would you go and why?
So like right this very moment.
This very moment, where would you go? It's the best time to be there, though. The fishing's going to be amazing. Where would you go?
I might go down to Harker's Island in North Carolina
Okay.
and try to catch a really big false albacore from the shore, like a
Whoa.
30-inch false albacore. Stand on some rocks with some corkers on and try to catch one of those from the shore.
That sounds pretty wild.
We haven't heard that answer.
You've done that before, I take it. I take it you've done that a couple times.
I haven't. I've done it up here.
Yeah.
Where our alb. So my fish for albies up here. I go on a jetty and I put my corkers on. You kind of boulder your way out there and then stand on the jetty and hope they come in. And our albacore they're not that big.
Right.
In North Carolina, they're way bigger. And there are a couple places I've been reading about where you can catch them from the shore. That to me is like the apex
Sick.
of albacore fishing. It's so fun.
God,
They're so cool looking.
that sounds cool. I can dig that. Okay, number 3 is, what is your best or favorite or one of your favorite fishing memories? There's so many, especially with, you angle all over the place. So it's,
I know. I'll tell you about a story that was really fun.
Yeah.
Somehow I connived Forbes into sending me, this is now probably 10 years ago or 12 years ago, to Russia, where this really eccentric Englishman named Peter Power had leased for 100 years these 3 Atlantic salmon rivers. And he, from the Russians, he made all these shady deals with all these oligarchs and stuff like that to get this water.
Yeah.
And it is the greatest Atlantic. It's where Atlantic salmon fishing, where it is where it used to be, if that makes any sense. Like they're fishing everywhere, they're huge.
Yeah.
So I went there and it turned out to be like Apocalypse Now, Joseph Conrad, Heart of Darkness kind of deal. So I got there, was there for 10 days, and this dude refused to let me interview him. He was on a dock on the hillside overlooking a river, and he just wouldn't let, because I was from Forbes. I was going to ask him some tough questions like that, and it got to like day 7, day 8. Every day I would be like, I need to interview Peter. They sent me over here a lot of money. I need to interview Peter.
They're gonna take my thumbs.
Day 9, nothing. I was leaving on day 10 at like 2:00 in the afternoon, and I got a message that morning at 7 a.m. that I could come up and interview Peter Parker. Peter Power.
Yeah.
And
I wish it was Peter Parker.
These huge lips, and he smoked his cigarettes, and he told me all the secrets of this place, and it turned out to be a great interview. But that to me was just a memory, because I remember kind of shitting in my pants that I wasn't going to get the story, but also like how beautiful it was there, and what a weirdo this guy was.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that's wild.
Peter
Kind of
Power.
scary sounding, but pretty wild. Okay, number 4 is, why do you fly fish? What do you get out of fly fishing? Why do you do it?
Oh boy. I love water. I love moving water in particular. I love all the gear, like we talked about before. I love the rods. I love the reels. I love the lines and the flies. I think, though, in the end, it comes back to that mind clearing thing. I mean, a lot of people, search for a mind clearing, a way to clear their minds. They do it with alcohol or sex or yoga or drugs or whatever. For me, it's fishing. And for me, when you make that cast and you're retrieving it, or it's swinging somewhere, and you feel that tug, like everything's out of the mind.
Yeah.
And and so I think that's the high. The high is that ability to forget everything else. Yeah. And just concentrate on that one thing, which may be silly. It's totally silly to a lot of people, especially I live in Brooklyn. People are like, dude, you going fishing? What? Why?
Yeah. People don't get it, man. Outside of fishing, people don't get it, I'm
totally okay with that.
Me too. Don't leave them, yeah.
I do find that, though, a lot of people are really curious. Like, people stop me on the street when I'm walking back, especially in the summer when I'm coming back from like a flat, and I've got my my flat shoes on and my bathing suit and my fishing shirt, carrying my rod, and I've got my stripping basket. They're like, dude, what's going on?
Yeah. What were you doing?
People in New York have no qualms about just stopping you in Mill Street and making you explain stuff.
Yeah.
People are kind of interested in it. So
that's awesome.
I don't give my spots, but
yeah. It is funny. People are so interested. It's so strange.
It is fun, like going to your apartment downtown Toronto with the waiters slung over your, or maybe you're in the waiters.
Yeah.
You got a bunch of weird shit in your hands.
I used to ride.
People looking at you like, what the?
back when I had no money at all, I used to ride the subway out to some of my spots.
Oh, cool, yeah.
In Queens, and I would have wouldn't put my waders on, but I had them in my bag. I had my fishing rod, and like people would just give you the funniest.
Yeah, that's cool though, man. Subway and out to catch fish. That's cool. Okay, number 5, Mitch's Fishies 5 is, what fly pattern represents you best and why? If you were a fly, what would you be?
I would say that's a crazy question.
Yes, it is.
My favorite fly is something called a Captain Crabby, which is an epoxy crab, which I just absolutely love. But I would say if one fly represented me, it would be a blue wing olive.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Oh, nice.
I love. I don't know if you guys have the same experience, but here, a good kind of like moody, cloudy, maybe misty day is what I always tell my fishing buddy Charlie, who goes fishing me in the Catskills. It's a blue wing olive day, and I just love days like that. I mean, just nothing. I don't want any wind, but it's just like, and that those days which to other people may seem dull and stupid, can just be these this huge hatch of blue wings comes off, and they're little flies and they're big fish that come up, and man, can't beat it. So,
oh man,
I just love the fly too. I've always loved the blue body and the white feathers and white wings. Very cool.
It's a beautiful fly. Yeah, that's a great answer. Love the moody days, man. I'm all about those rainy kind of days fishing. It's the nicest, man. That's it. That's it for Mitch's Fishies 5. That's it for the show. It's been absolutely amazing talking, Monty. Like, holy shit. We could talk for another 2 hours, like, geez, there's so much stuff to talk about, but this has been great.
Thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate it. Love your show too. It's awesome.
Oh, right on. Thanks.
Thanks.
Man. Really appreciate
Thanks,
that.
man. Appreciate
Thanks
that.
for that. Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely taking up on the margarita thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Definitely. And then you guys got to take me down to Trinidad, dude.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
That'd be pretty cool.
My mom will cook you some
I want
nice.
the permit.
Yeah. Awesome, man.
Yeah. Well, we don't know how to like really catch them that well, but they're there. You do it.
Seriously, you guys should think about an October. I mean, it's great fishing in the summer as well. In fact, I prefer the fishing there in the summer because it's a lot of dry fly fishing, but it could be a little dicey with the water levels. But the scene in the fall is so cool.
Yeah.
It's everybody's really nice, and the conga lines that form on these pools, and you have great dinners, and it gets dark early, so it's kind of, the whole thing's fun.
I'm
super cool.
Man, I'm sold.
Yeah,
and every once in a while you catch a salmon.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Just to top it off. I love that. Where can people find you, Monty? On Instagram, on your website? How can people, little shameless plug?
Yeah, so montyburke.com is the website, and I'm on Instagram too. Pretty easy to find. Twitter as well. I'm not great at social media. I actually did my first Instagram post for this book. I had my new puppy chewing on the book.
Yeah, saw that. Yeah.
Whoever did it. Yeah, now I've got this whole animal theme, which I'm starting up again this week. To me, that was a. I don't love promoting all this shit, so it's kind of fun to have animals and with the book.
Yeah.
Come up with weird ways to promote it. Yeah.
Exactly. And make up little stories about what they're reading and what they're thinking.
That's great, man. I love it.
That's awesome.
It's a great book. Everybody at home listening, if you haven't read Lords of the Fly yet, go pick it up and check it out, because it's an amazing read, and you're gonna have a lot of fun reading it. I can promise you that. But that's it for the show.
Can you get e-copies of Lords of the Fly, like Amazon? Yeah.
Kindle. Yep. In fact,
Kindle?
that's all you can get now. They ran out of the third printing should hit Amazon later on this week, but the Kindle's the only thing available right now. So
well, there you go.
I'm going to put links to those in the show notes, so check that out. If you don't know how Google works, you can just check out the show notes, and we'll put a link there for you. But yeah, Monty, again, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Great to talk to you.
Great to meet you.
Keep up great work.
Absolutely.
Thanks, man. Later.
Appreciate it.
Take care. What the hell? That guy's the coolest guy ever.
Holy shit. He's my favorite.
I love Monty, man. That was a blast. That was so much fun.
Oh, wow. He's so cool, man.
So much to talk about.
Guys, the book is ridiculous. I know I hogged it because we got the book. Monty sent us the book, and I hogged it for the last few days and read it. But I'll send it around to you guys, because it's sick.
I got something to read.
There's a lot of really good stories. It's insane. Like, I was like, he touches on all kinds of, because all these guys were down there, but they were like partying, like drugs, drinking, fishing, eating. It was crazy. And then there's a whole section at the end of the book about this guy named Bobby Era, who was a mafia guy. And at the end of Homosassa, like when it started to kind of go away, this mafia guy came in, and he kind of just torments Homosassa, and everybody kind of hates him, but he's like literally like murders people. It's
oh my god! Does he fish too?
And he gets huge into tarpon fishing, and it's ridiculous. You gotta read it. Check it out. And
that's crazy.
Yeah, I'll bring it over to you.
Tony Montana becomes a fly angler.
And the stories are just like, holy Jesus. But yeah, no, great. That was super fun. That's
great. So much to talk about, man.
Yeah,
it's so cool that he's got a cabin on the Marguerite too.
That's cool.
That's
crazy.
So many people.
Funny.
Man, yeah,
I went on a date. I went on a date on Saturday, and the girl and the lady who I went on a date with has her family has property on the Mirror Machine.
Huh.
Well, that better work out for us.
Yeah. How'd that date go, Elma? Good.
Oh well, she did really well. She's super sweet.
You know what? Good for you, man. You deserve love. That's all I can say.
You did, yep. Especially when it comes with a cabin on the Mirror Machine that I can go to.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, hey guys, we've been fishing a lot, and I gotta say, it's felt really good to actually dive into steelheading.
Mm-hmm. You caught 2, and so did you, Mitch. Holy
Thus
shit.
far, we were recording this on November 16th. Of course, it comes out on December 1st. But Mitch just the other day got a fantastic fish.
Oh, that was a beautiful fish.
And we're going to rivers that we don't normally go to.
I've never been to that river before, and that was really fun. That was
yeah, that river that you guys went on there reminded me of the Credit.
Yeah, that fish hit, man, because it was a dry line, and the water, it was in a deep section. That fish smoked my fly, and I was like, holy jeez. I was very happy to have one. That was beautiful. It's been a great. I'm just happy to be getting out so much, like to see.
That's what I'm saying. Like this is. I feel like this is the first year. Like I'm like I can consider myself like a steelheader.
We're hitting it every weekend, and multiple times in the week we're taking days off work. It's a dream. I'm absolutely and this is the plan forever. Like I just want to find time in the fall to just take some days off, because it's like it's worth it, And we just got a bunch of rain. Aldo's thinking Wednesday. I'm really liking that idea.
I'm knocking off work for sure.
Some client meetings. If I could just figure out a way to move them, if I could just tell my clients, explain to them that this is, and there they are now. Get the heck out of here, ah.
Right.
Or you just take you just dip out of the river for a bit, take a little meeting, and fucking
true.
Everyone says you got to rest the run, you got to rest the pool. We'll have a meeting while you do it.
That's true.
That's a good.
I did just upgrade my phone plan. Now I have 20 gigs. So I can maybe take it. You
got 20 gigs now?
Yeah, well, unlimited, but it throttles at 20. This is not important.
I know, but okay, can we talk about it after? Because like, I can't get that.
After. Of course we can.
We can talk about it.
Of course we
But
can.
yeah, no, I just feel super like lucky that we're actually, because I never really, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to knock the credit. That's not what I'm trying to say right here. But when most of these extended seasons and end in December, and then it's just like for the January, February, March, we're just fishing the credit.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Oh, it's just one play.
I'm not really complaining, but it's the only option, so it's like better than no option.
Yeah, of course.
So might as well fish the other options before that. I don't know.
Because there's like tons of them. So yeah.
There's tons of them, and they're beautiful places, and you get to see. I mean, how many fucking cool towns
I know.
did we go to? Did we drive through and eat lunch in just this past weekend? Like so many nice places in southwestern Ontario.
Beautiful.
Never really go to southwestern Ontario.
Now COVID's going back up, so I'm laying low again. But I'm definitely going to make some trips out to my favorite river, which is within driving distance, for some beautiful days. And, maybe, I don't know, we'll figure it out. But it's been a great year.
Some day traps, know?
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, I aside from fishing and seeing you, the only people I see is you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, no, it's true.
Well, you're in our circle.
So
yeah,
I'm in it. You're the only thing about it. But anyway, I guess what I'm saying is I hope people are getting out and enjoying if they can.
If you can, enjoy. Absolutely.
Because it's been a really magical fall for me anyway, for us.
Yeah,
it really has been.
We hope everybody's staying healthy out there. But but you know what? Everybody check out Lords of the Fly by Monty Burke. Amazing book. You're gonna love it, 100%. And thank you for Monty. Thank you for coming on. You are one cool guy, and I really hope. I really hope we're able to hit the water together because that would be fun. That would be really fun.
I really hope to get you in front of a tarpon, Mitch, one day.
Oh, God.
That'd be fun because I got to do it with Yelma. And
I'm telling you guys, like reading this and all the tarpon stories, I'm like, holy shit! Like tarpon fishing's insane.
It's insane. I know we've said this before, but it was like a couple casts and I got one, and then Aldo and I are like, well, this is going to be a good tarpon evening. And then,
and they're beautiful. They're so cool looking, like such a cool looking fish.
Cool. They're so kind of strange at the same way.
Prehistoric.
They look so much different.
Yeah,
they look so much different with their mouth open than closed. Well, I know that sounds really stupid, but it's like
no, because it's
completely
huge. It's the size of their whole body.
A trout, it opens its mouth, it still kind of looks the same. Yeah. A tarpon, it's like they open their mouths and it's just like, what is this fucking weird thing?
Yeah, it's like alien.
You know what I mean? Almost looks like they're breaking their neck when you see those like videos of them slow-mo jumping and stuff.
Well, the gill flares and stuff. Yeah, those are wild, man. Yeah.
How are these things staying intact?
I don't know. They're like bits. I know.
When they're jumping around.
Well, Monty talks about it in here. He says, tarpon are millions of years old, and humans have been around for, hundreds of thousands of years. Where we go out on the water naively like, like we're going to dominate this tarpon. We're in the tarpon's world. Not the other way around, and it's like that's so cool because especially when there's you even just see it 150 pound, 200 pound tarpon swimming, like that's got to be a wild. I'd want to just go jump in there and swim around with it
until you realize there's a shark following.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's a really good point, Mitch. That was my first big takeaway of like when I first showed up to
your
pal's place, my pal's place
in the Keys.
And the Keys were just in the backyard. He goes right to the ocean.
Is he in Isla Morada? Is that where that is?
No, he's in Marathon, which is the next key over. So Key Island is the same. They're synonymous anyway. Whatever. So so the first place they had down there was like right in because they're on a flat right now, which is like amazing. But the first was in a bit of a channel or near the marina.
Yeah.
And I look at, I've never seen a tarpon before, and there's just these like black logs swimming through the water.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, crazy! Are those sharks? And my buddy Quinn, his dad was like, oh no, those are the tarpon. I was like, what? Cool. And then you'd see them come up, and like out of the water and stuff, and I was like, holy. Fuck, that's a huge fish. I was like, oh, are you kidding me? Like,
we saw them in Tulum, and we thought they were like dolphins. So like, what are those dolphins?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. We saw them off not in casting distance, but in Tulum, and Yeah, and Rhett was like, yeah, those are tarpon.
But
It's like to Monty's point, you're like, they are kind of scary.
Yeah.
Like when we fished for them in Tobago, it was almost like
Monsters.
a blessing that you couldn't really see them because the lagoon's kind of murky and you're just casting at mangroves.
Yeah.
Because you do your heart starts
you freak out, panic.
My heart starts racing when I'm like trying to get cast a blueing olive to a 10-inch trout.
Yeah.
So it's like fucking
totally
trying to land something in front of a 50-pound fish. You're like, holy shit.
Yeah. I know, because it can take you in the water, and in fact, some of the stories, they take people in the water and they gaff them, and they get pulled into the friggin' ocean. It's like,
and there's sharks in the ocean.
Yeah, well, there's a couple in here that are like that. I'm like, Jesus, man, these guys are like hardcore, serious dudes. But shit, yeah, we'll do it, man. We'll get out there.
It would be so cool to just spend like a month.
Yeah, it would be
living in a not necessarily fishing every day, but just living and have the ability to go saltwater fishing every
day. That's good for fishing. Like you can get out there for a month. I would be
kind of like how we've been doing with steelheading this month. But instead you're just going tarpon fishing. Like fuck, that'd be fun.
So sick, man.
Just once, I don't know.
Well, we might be able to do it during COVID. I mean, if Mitch, you don't need to go in the office, and then if.
What are you saying? We're going to Tobago, Yilma?
Is this what's happening right now? Is this the start of?
Is this the start of us spending
of like our own novel, Fishing in Tobago with Yilma? Yilma brought it up on a whim, and that was it. The three of us never knew what would happen over those next 8 years when we moved to Tobago to fix permit.
8 years.
I don't know. Everybody at home, thank you for listening to the show. Monty, again, thanks for coming on. And check out the show notes for his book. Check out just the store for his book, Amazon, Google, Chapters, I don't know, wherever you fish. Or find books, don't fish in a Barnes & Noble. Lords of the Fly, Monty Burke. That's it for me, Mitch Aldo.
Thanks, Monty. Thanks, everybody, for listening. And take care, comb your hair, eh?
Yilma?
Take care and comb your hair.
Nice. Very
also.
Good. Thanks, everybody. See you later.
You can find all of SoFly's content at SoFly.ca. On Instagram, we're at the SoFly Crew. You can reach us at thesoflycrew@gmail.com with any questions, comments, or concerns. On Facebook, we're SoFly, and our podcast is available on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Spotify.